Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to welcome the August gathering of learned academicians on behalf of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. I request Dr. Ayyappan to please present him a bouquet. I would now request Professor M.P. Yadav, Secretary NAAS, to deliver the welcome address.
Most Honorable Bharat Ratna, Professor C.N.R. Rao Sahab, Dr. S. Ayyappan, President of the Academy, distinguished, esteemed fellowship, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome from the core of my heart all the dignitaries on the dais and distinguished fellowship on this very auspicious occasion of the Foundation Day, 25th Foundation Day of the Academy, making the beginning of Silver Jubilee year celebrations for next year. All the around, with this all humility, this august body, which is a treasure of knowledge and science, we feel that it is both our privilege and honor to extend a hearty welcome to Professor C.N.R. Rao. Sir, this academy is honored to have you as chief guest and for delivering the foundation lecture. Sir, we again welcome you wholeheartedly. So, we welcome all of you from the core of our heart for joining at this occasion. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the esteemed fellowship. We are still wondering whether it's in reality that we have Bharat Ratna Professor C.N.R. Rao amidst us this afternoon. So the esteemed fellowship of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, the hall is full, heart is full. We would welcome you, sir. So very grateful that you came here. You're blessing us amidst your busy schedule. Welcome to all of you. And we also have at this occasion the recognition by the Government of India for 3 esteemed agricultural scientists. So we thought it fit on the occasion of the foundation of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. In your esteemed presence, we also say how grateful we are and we thank them, honor them. We have 3 of them amidst us. First is Padma Bhushan, Dr. Madappa Mahadevappa, an eminent Indian agricultural scientist and plant breeder, renowned for developing several hybrid varieties of rice, served as Vice Chancellor of 2 universities, Chairman of the Agricultural Scientists Recruitment Board, and several other awards to his credit, like the KKM Award, 72 Hooker Award, Karnataka Government Rajyotsava Award, the Choturam Award, and the Padma Shri in 2005, as also Padma Bhushan in 2014. We at this time request you, sir, humbly, the chief guest of this occasion, Bharat Ratna Professor Rao Sahab, to do the honors to Dr. Mahadevappa.
How grateful I am on behalf of all the 3 Padma awardees here that we are being felicitated in such a big galaxy and by no less a person than Bharat Ratna C.N.R. Rao. So I thank the Academy and all the office bearers of the Academy. All these, those sitting on the dais are really responsible for, they guided us, they provided all the required facilities for doing whatever work we did in research, teaching and extension, and even in writing and communicating our technology to the users. So once again, on behalf of all the 3 of the, I thank all of it. Thank you, sir, for I'm really blessed to be honored by you.
We have with us Padma Shri, Dr. Brahma Singh Ji. I would request him to come to the dais. Dr. Brahma Singh, presently advisor to the Noni Research Foundation. He has been director of 2 research laboratories of DRDO. Dr. Singh, known for greening of the Leh and the Nubra, such difficult valleys, glacier valleys, pioneered research in protected cultivation in India. Several awards to his credit, including the Indira Priyadarshini Vrikshamitra Award 95 and other awards of the Horticulture Society of India. Once again, we request our chief guest to kindly honor the Padma Shri Dr. Brahma.
Rao sir, other dignitaries on the dais, fellowship, I'm thankful to you all, and I feel privileged to be felicitated on this occasion, that is World Environment Day, and I happen to work the area related with the environment. That's what the Dr. Ayappan said, the greening of the Leh Valley, the most difficult area, and finding out some suitable fruit crop such as sea buckthorn, and I was instrumental in finding out the suitable drought animal, the Ladakhi breed, the Janskari breed. I am a firm believer of the local resources that has paid the dividend there. Then I have worked on that medicinal plant also, and I congratulate all the fellowships which have been admitted today, and I once again thank the entire fellowship, particularly the people who are on the dais. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have with us Padma Shri Dr. Ajay Parida from the MSS Research Foundation, Chennai, known cytogeneticist and molecular biologist, director of the biotechnology program at MSS Foundation, played major role in several multi-stakeholder dialogues in the area of biotechnology application, dissemination, biosafety issues, served on several committees, is, as you know, a fellow of several academies. At this time, we have great privilege in welcoming him again. He is our fellow, and congratulations to you. We request our chief guest to kindly do that.
Esteemed chief guest of the function, dignitaries on the dais, my dear friends and colleagues. I am indeed grateful and privileged and truly humbled by the gestures shown by the National Agriculture Academy on the recognition which has been not only to me but my colleagues who are working at the Swaminathan Research Foundation, and it is my students and the colleagues who has really done this work, and also without the support and encouragement from the seniors like you, this award would not have been possible. And I believe strongly that if something is given to you, much is expected in return. And I only hope that I will live up to that expectation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the Honorable Chief Guest for doing the honors. Sir, before you have the entire National Agriculture Research Education System, the esteemed fellowship comprising former secretaries, the present Director General of CSIR, everybody who matters in Indian agriculture, including the Vice Chancellors and Directors of institutes, all are before you, and we have again special privilege in welcoming you here. We would also request you kindly to release some of the scientific publications of the Academy at this occasion.
India's future. Second report on agriculture, credit and insurance. And the presidential addresses delivered on NAAS Foundation Day. Thank you, sir. Now I would request Professor P.L. Gautam, Vice President NAAS, to give us an introduction of the chief guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud privilege and honor to introduce the most celebrated Bharat Ratna Professor C.N.R. Rao, the honorable chief guest of today's program. You all know that on 16th November 2013, the Government of India announced the selection of Professor Rao for the conferment of Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award, to Professor Rao, a world-renowned chemist in the field of solid state and structural chemistry. Professor Rao was born on June the 30th, 1934 in Bangalore. He receives MSc from Banaras Hindu University, PhD from Purdue University, and DSc from Mysore University. He is National Research Professor, Linus Pauling Research Professor, and Honorary President of Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, Bangalore. He has headed Science Advisory Council to 4 Indian Prime Ministers. He has contributed to science education not only through initiating government policy, but also by personally writing books for school children, lecturing and inspiring thousands of students. His work on transition metal oxides has immensely contributed to the understanding of the fundamentals of these important materials. His pioneering work has led to a systematic study of compositionally controlled metal insulator transitions. He has also made immense contributions to nanomaterials. Professor Rao's current passion is graphene, the new wonder material, and artificial photosynthesis. He has led the National Nano Mission, and his efforts have resulted in impressive growth of research and development in this area, positioning India fourth in the world. His vision and efforts have led to the establishment of Institute of Nanoscience and Technology at Mohali, National Center for Molecular Materials Research at Thiruvananthapuram, creation of Ministry of Earth Sciences, and expansion of Center for Soft Matter Research at Bangalore. He is the recipient of most of the major scientific awards, fellowships of all leading science academies, including the Royal Society of London, US National Academy, and he has also served as president of Indian National Science Academy. In fact, science has been and science is a way of life for him. Professor Rao has a great influence in formulating the science policy of the country. He has been an ardent advocate and crusader for higher investments in research and development and human resource development, a very critical and crucial area for which we debated today in the morning session as well. Almost all major international science and technology cooperation programs have been led by him, establishing India as a valued and equal partner in scientific ventures in the world. He is an institution in himself who cared and nurtured the talent in the world of science. As president of the Academy of Sciences for the developing world, Professor Rao has spread the message of science to the citizens and leaders alike of entire developing world. He is an author of over 1,500 research papers and 45 books, received over 50,000 citations to his credit, and surpassed an H index of 100. 70,000. 50,000 goes to 70,000. Please give you a big hand. He is on the editorial board of very leading professional journals. He is an experimenter, prolific writer, and science communicator. Professor Rao shares tremendous rapport with the young scientists and other scientists who love and respect him. He has received honoris causa doctorate degrees from over 60 countries around the world. He has been honored with several national and international awards, which I will not be taking all the names, the most important being Medal of the Faraday Society, Medal of Royal Society of Chemistry London, Einstein Gold Medal of UNESCO, Centenary Medal of the Royal Society of Chemistry London, Order of Scientific Merit from the President of Brazil, Gauss Professorship of Germany, and of course Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan earlier. The Bharat Ratna was received by Professor Rao from the Honorable President of this country in a glittering ceremony on 26th April 2014, making him the fourth scientist after Sir C.V. Raman, Sir M. Vishesharaya and Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam to receive this highest civilian award of the country. The National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and National Agriculture Research System, headed by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, while rejoicing this moment and honor, congratulate Professor Rao and wish him even higher successes with the passage of every year in science, science and technology management, and mentorship. It has evoked great joy and pride in the hearts of every Indian scientist. With this brief introduction of such a tall personality, I take this opportunity to request him to deliver his Foundation Day to the National Science Academy. Thank you.
Dr. Ayyappan, other dignitaries on the dais, my many friends here, fellow scientists, and members of the Agriculture Academy, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to be here. My only connection with agriculture has been that my grandfather was an agriculturist and he lived by whatever he earned from his agriculture. And other than that, I myself have done very little except planting trees wherever I can. I have planted about 25,000 trees in the last few years. That aside, I have very great respect for agricultural science. I think it is science that has helped India and will continue to help India and the world at large. It is something that all of us depend on. And I do not want to take much time talking about the importance of agriculture because it's too obvious. I would, however, say a few things about science in India. I actually came prepared to give a semi-technical or semi-popular talk on nanoscience and technology. In fact, I brought even a PowerPoint thing and it's been loaded. But after just around lunchtime talking to people, I was given the impression that may not be the best thing today, but maybe talking in general terms on science itself may be better. So I have changed my talk to something else. I'm going to call my talk Doing Science in India. That is the title. And there are no PowerPoint, so you don't have to see the screen, and I will say whatever I have to. Well, for those who are much younger than me, I would like to remind you how science was, say, in 1947, when India got freedom. I had just entered college. I remember the great Independence Day on August 15th, 1947, when we went around the streets with bells and gongs. I still remember the exciting speeches of that evening, of that night. But what was interesting was, India was a very, very poor country. So poor that nobody believes how poor we were. At least in Mysore state, which I belong to, and also the rest of India, there was rationing. In fact, throughout the Second World War, up to 1949, there was rationing. Food rationing, cloth rationing,
In fact, there were enough, my grandfather would get 2 dhotis per year. I remember that. And they had to somehow use influence to get an extra dhoti for him. It was unbelievable. And of course, food was not available in plenty, and it was rationing was very, very strict, particularly rice and wheat and anything else that you may want. And in fact, you didn't see food like in the streets of India that we see today. Of course, they were very poor. And of course, in that time, of course, I finished eventually my studies in Benares and went away to the United States to do my PhD and so on. And eventually, in 1959, I came back after close to 5 to 6 years in the United States and took a position in the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I was very young. I was 25 years old at that time. I finished my bachelor's degree at the age of 17, so everything was a bit done at a very young age. Because I was 25 when I came back to the Indian Institute of Science. That institute we see now in Bangalore had nothing to offer, absolutely no equipment, no instruments. In fact, there was not even a single spectrometer worth mentioning. And here I was, having done all kinds of spectroscopy, all kinds of diffraction, studies of various kinds. Science of that period, which was at the very front line at that time, both in Berkeley at Purdue University, where I studied and did postdoctoral work. And how do you do research and spectroscopy without a spectrometer? That was a problem. But still, we had to find some way of doing it. I would beg, borrow, and steal. In fact, whenever I went abroad those days, I used to go with empty suitcases, come back, suitcases full of all kinds of samples, powders, all kinds of chemicals, compounds, wires, thermocouples. In fact, my first several years of research was based on that. In fact, I had to build everything. And if I wanted to heat something at, say, 1,000 degrees, well, there was no furnace. Today, my students order it, and they get it in 2-3 days by some company. Today, if you want 1,000-degree heating, you have to build your own furnace. In fact, many things I had to build, little instruments. So much of my early research depended on that. It was then, I had to think, look, here I am in a country where I want to do frontier research without major equipment. So what is that kind of research that would lead me to an area where I could still contribute in a big way and get notice for it in the world, and not without equipment? It is that at that time I decided to give out spectroscopy, molecular structure, looking at atoms, all that. That is not going to be possible in India in the 50s and the 60s. So I said, why not I do work on the chemistry of solids and materials with simple experiments. In fact, I started doing some simple things. In fact, what is amazing is some of the things I did in 1959, 60, still being cited. There's a lot of them still being cited. Simple experiments still leading me somewhere. And that has helped me. In fact, for those who may not know, there is a very famous poem by Robert Frost. He says, I was going in the lonely woods. I saw the road split in 2 ways. One road that was highly crowded, everybody went by that. The other was a lonely road. I took the lonely road where very few people walked by, and that has helped me a lot. In fact, the subject I started on in 1959-60, where very few people were working on it in the world, today is a very, very crowded field. So crowded that people think I'm a grandfather. They don't even realize. Many people think I'm dead. In fact, I told the man who did that in 1965, I don't think he's still alive or something. So it is nice to belong to a field where you create your own direction. Though it started with a simple way. Today, my area is very, very sophisticated area. You need all kinds of microscopes where I directly look at atoms, manipulate atoms. I do all kinds of measurements, very sophisticated measurement, look at every electron in every material, in all kinds of detail. I've got a fantastic lab. I have a lab which is at least as good or better than MIT or Cambridge, definitely. And what reason I'm telling you is, compared to those poverty-stricken days of 1950s and 60s, today we have a lab which is something, at least in my case, as good as the very best in the world. So I've seen this gradual change from poverty to middle income group, lower middle income group, upper middle income group, and fairly, today, really a condition where we are quite well off, at least in the laboratory. It has been a tremendous transformation. That is the story of India. What is sad, of course, over in India is very few people count our blessings. India, we are never generally grateful for what we have. We are usually looking for things we don't have normally. And most people in India have the tendency to look for something we don't have and be miserable about it. And instead of saying, look here, what we had was nothing, what we have is so much. And look at the streets of any village in UP. I've lived enough in UP, I can tell you. Go through any interior village in Uttarakhand, UP. Everywhere you see fruits and sweets. You didn't see that in 1947 or 1950s. I remember in UP, you would stay in the cha dukan some the way, a little mud cup, you would have a tea and maybe some small thing. There was no restaurant, no food being sold in kilogram quantities that is being done today. So the reason I'm saying is agriculture, the effect of agriculture, effect of food industry, you can see in the streets of India today, where there was nothing. Today, in fact, people say, well, India has no poverty. India has so much food. Every foreigner who comes and tells me, who visits me, tells me, my God, you have so much here. In fact, that is the kind of thing that has happened. Well, coming back to science, where are we in science today? Well, even those days, we had a few good scientists, some of them who made fairly important names in their field. Of course, then science itself was a bit different. The science of the 1960s and 70s doesn't exist anymore, at least in my field. If you have not seen what has happened in the last 10 years or 5 years, you won't even be able to understand the papers anymore. The language of science changes so fast that you cannot keep up with it. I always quote Alvin Toffler, the famous, the future shock. In Future Shock, Alvin Toffler says, it is extremely difficult to get used to the rate of change of acceleration in society. It is not velocity, but acceleration. That is the derivative of velocity with time. It is not only acceleration, but the rate of change of acceleration. That is what is happening in society today. Exactly what is happening in science. The way science is developing is extremely difficult to be abreast, be in the very front line, unless you are there running all the time. And I'm trying my best to do that. Well, anyway, the real question is, where does India stand? Individuals, you'll always find a few individuals here and there. The sadness is that with all that we have done, India still contributes only 2.5% to world research today. That percentage has not changed for the last 20 years. It was 2.5% 20 years ago. Even today it's 2.5%. All statistics will show that. Amount of research. Well, China was also 2.5% 10, 15 years ago. Now they are really 14 to 15% of world research. And they are going to overtake United States in about a year or 2 years. America is about 16.5%. And the prediction is China will take over and become 16 to 17% in a year or so. And America will be number 2 in the quantity of science. I'm not worried about it. Quality of science, however, it worries me. Quality of science, China started with a lot of second-rate work, quite a bit of plagiarizing, a lot of copying. But however, slowly I can see a lot of good papers coming from China in the last 3 to 4 years particularly. So there again, India has not done extremely well as I think should be. For example, there is something called a top 1% of the research, most cited research of the world. If you take that, India's contribution to that is only 1%. And China is about 6%. And they were also 1% about 10 years ago. So this kind of thing is what I'm a bit worried about. Well, anyway, science, therefore, has to perform. There's no question in my mind. And the reason I say that is, science is, to me, is something like by itself a tremendous thing. Don't forget, science has nothing to do with technology. I'm not talking about technology. Science, don't forget, is the creative urge of man. Science will exist as long as human beings are there. Science has nothing to do with grants, nothing to do with governments and giving fellowships and lots of dumping money on people. No. Very good science will continue. Even when there is no money, when no government, no. Science is that urge of man. It is only that urge of man when man realizes is the one that contributes to big ideas in science. And big progress in science happens by individuals who contribute to science of that kind. It comes from an urge of a different kind. And in fact, that kind of science India requires a lot. We do need, as somebody was saying, we need a lot of crazy fellows in India. We don't have enough people who are crazy and mad. They're too normal. And I think we need people who are absolutely crazy who want to do something. And in fact, as somebody said, we are short of nuts in India. And absolutely true. And that is one thing. However, people, another thing that I'm very upset about, since you are in agriculture, you will appreciate what I'm saying. When they talk of science, what is it in India, what is the meaning of science for most government people? Either atomic energy and space. They talk about rockets and atomic reactors. And there is big science, where thousands and thousands of crores go there, and they do technology. There's very little science in that. I have nothing against atomic energy. I've been a member of Atomic Energy Commission for 30 years now. I have nothing against that. But the question is that should not be misunderstood as science. There's very little science in that. However, that is the one that is funded. Compared to that, the amount of funding, say, a person like me in chemistry or physics or a college or a university gets is extremely pathetic. Our investment in science has remained less than 1% of the GDP. That is one thing, sad, you may say. But education is little worse. We are only still spending only 2%, even though we declare it with 6% of the GDP for education, we spend very little. Education is, you can see why our universities are going down by the hour. So we are not investing. And second, where there is investment, India has also shown results. Agriculture being a small example, may not be the best example. In the last 5 years, not 5 years, maybe more like 9 years, as you know, nanotechnology, on which I was supposed to give a talk, was started in India. I was asked to be chairman of the nano mission. There was hardly any papers coming from nanoscience in India, except by a few individuals. Someone like in my laboratory, I've been working on nanoscience much before the subject got to be known as an important one. I've been working on it for 20, 30 years. And we started funding nanoscience from the government. And what is amazing, it is now number 3 in the world in publications and in impact. Nanoscience in India, nanoscience from India. So wherever there is targeted funding and targeted support, even in India today, there is a lot of result. So I think we should start looking at how to fund science, how to target our funding. Well, I do not want to go on talking about the need for funding. That is the least important. The more important thing to me is why science for India? Why science for anybody? And why is it that there are not enough inspired citizens in India? Particularly coming from a city like Bangalore, because Hyderabad is equally bad, not as bad as Bangalore. Bangalore has become a city without a soul. A lot of young people going around with briefcases and neckties. All of them are making a lot of money, because many of them are committing suicide as well. In fact, Bangalore is the suicide capital of India. I hope you all know that. Because these young people get dejected with life at the age of 30. They are very, they don't know what to do. There are a few 100,000 people like that in Bangalore. 3 lakh people belong to that IT sector, where they're all making money, but they're very miserable. So instead of that, we should have made some of these bright young people to take up science, take up other things, not necessarily science, other creative ventures. So it is necessary, therefore, because of this, to think about why science is required and why science should be done. In fact, in my own life, I can tell you, whenever I have got dejected, which was used to be very often, in fact, it was so depressing. When I was young, I couldn't sleep because I wouldn't be able to do a particular kind of research, publish a particular kind of paper, go on worrying myself. My wife would say, why are you suffering like that? Why don't, I would be really sleepless for days and days sometimes. And all those sleepless days and suffering I had in the early days. And even today, when I worry about what kind of science am I going to do to make an impression in this world, I am always inspired by some great scientists. In fact, we have to somehow use the traditions of science, stories of science to get inspiration. In fact, in our country, there have been wonderful stories. We often forget we had a story like, no one can beat the example of J.C. Bose. After he came back with a bachelor's degree in Cambridge, he was a teacher in Presidency College. Even today, it amazes me how in 1895, don't forget, in 19th century, he made the discovery of telegraphy in Calcutta. And when he did that research, electron was not yet known. There was no electron. Electron had not yet been discovered. Electron was discovered in 1897 by J.J. Thomson. Before the discovery of the electron, here is a young Indian, young Bengali in Calcutta, who has made discovery of telegraphy. It is amazing. It really is so amazing to me that it could happen in India and we don't remember this story. How did this man do that? In fact, many people have asked me, how did J.C. Bose do that in 1895? But poor man got cheated out. You see, then we were a colony of the British. He didn't get the Nobel Prize. Marconi got the entire Nobel Prize. Marconi wouldn't have got the Nobel Prize, but for the work of J.C. Bose. He should have shared it. No question about that. There's a lot written about it in the Royal Society. In our Royal Society notes, a lot of people have written how this was a terrible thing that happened. Well, here's a good example. Another example, in India, people don't give textbook lessons on these things. I think our children should be told, grown-ups should know this also. Imagine you are in a miserable hole, little place near Tanjore. In fact, I was there last year, to give a Ramanujan lecture in Ramanujan's birthplace. I went all the way. It's very difficult to go there even now. You have to go by plane to some place, eventually go by car, eventually reach the place. There were a few hundred children I went to give the lecture there, just because it was Ramanujan's place. How did this man, without college education, write 3,000 theorems and conjectures, sitting in a miserable place like that? It is not easy. No one else has done that in mathematics. He didn't have college education. He didn't have any grants. He didn't have a big salary. But he wrote this. Even today, there are people working on Ramanujan's theorems and conjectures. So it is amazing, amazing. So these are all Indian stories. Well, my own hero in life, the greatest hero is a man who should be a hero for every scientist and every human being, in fact, is Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday had only 3 years of schooling, don't forget, only 3 years of schooling. He never went to college. But, he was an assistant to a bookbinder, and he was binding books and all kinds of things. And one day, a man comes to the bookbinder, and the bookbinder tells, "Sir, I've got this young boy who is very much interested in science. He has just now bound a book on electricity by voltas." He tells him, the man who comes there says, "Oh, is that so? I've got 3 tickets for the lectures by Sir Humphrey Davy on chemistry. Maybe this boy would like to go." He gives him 3 tickets. And this young boy, Faraday, attends these lectures by Humphrey Davy, those 3 lectures, and takes down the notes of his lectures very carefully, comes back, binds all these notes that he has taken of his lectures as 3 lectures by Humphrey Davy, and 3 days later goes back to Sir Humphrey Davy and says, "Sir, I've got your lectures bound as the 3 lectures." Sir Humphrey Davy gives it to him. And of course, as young people say, "Sir, do you think you can give me a job?" Yes. Because as all of us do, "I'm sorry, there is no vacancy." Right now, there is no possibility. He sends him away. Fortunately for Faraday, a month later, the man who was cleaning and things around the lab, working as a attender in the lab of Humphrey Davy, runs away. Then he remembers Faraday and says, "Why don't you get that boy who bound that book of his lectures for me?" He brings him and make him. The first title of Faraday was Chief Bottle Washer in the laboratory. He was called Bottle Washer, and that was his title of his job. And that bottle washer went on observing his teacher, his guru or master, Humphrey Davy, helped him in experiment, slowly started doing his own experiments, wrote his first publication in 1816. 1816 was his first paper. That slowly he excelled, became much better than his guru, better than his master. And the number of discoveries he made, Faraday's laws of electrolysis, of course, discovery of electricity, magnetism, diamagnetism, paramagnetism, permittivity, electrode, ion, cation, anion, electrolysis, all these words were coined by him. People forget the word electrode is Faraday's word. Paramagnetism, diamagnetism, they're all words of Faraday. How did he do all that? And then, of course, he discovered electricity. The famous statement, of course, you all know, when he discovered electricity, the Prime Minister asked him, "What is the use of this new discovery?" Of course, the famous answer is supposed to be, "What is the use of a newly born baby?" he said. And that was a famous answer. But the better answer was when the finance minister, I think just now he has met the finance minister. Finance minister asked him, "What is the use of your discovery?" He said, "Sir, one day you will tax it," he said it, and left it. So that's the reason I'm telling you about Faraday is Lord Rutherford was the greatest physicist of all time, a great man in Cambridge. He has written a beautiful essay on Faraday, and he says in that, if only Faraday lived in 20th century, he was in 19th century, he died in 1865 or 66, if he would have got at least 5 Nobel Prizes, he said. Well, I count it as 4 Nobel Prizes definitely in one life, at least 4. He's the one who discovered benzene. the most important organic chemical. The number of things he did is extraordinary. People tell a joke about me. C.N.R. Rao was on writing papers. No, I don't go on writing papers. I work and spend a lot of sleepless nights, work very hard and do nothing else to get those papers. Let others try in my field and compete with me. All right, how many papers there is? The question is, just because people write, people work very hard beyond the call of duty, don't laugh at them. People even laughed at Faraday. He wrote 450 papers individually. One man sitting in the lab, 450 papers, no assistant, no PhD student, no postdocs. How did he write that? Amazing, you see. And amazing, what reason more important for all of us here is, the Queen Victoria sent him, Mr. Faraday, I would like to award you the knighthood. He would want, and then he writes back to, my dear Queen, you have been so generous and kind to me. Now, I am known as Michael Faraday. People call me Mike. I don't want to be known as Sir Michael Faraday. Thank you very much. He didn't accept. He's an amazing man. And then what is even more interesting to me about Faraday is the Royal Society, of which I've been a member for the last 35 years now. It's a great academy. And they asked him to be president of the Royal Society. He says, thank you so much that you think I'm worthy of being president of this great academy, the Royal Society, but my place is in the laboratory. Please excuse me. He didn't accept. This is the kind of person that amazes me, that really inspires me. And that is why we do science, you see. The people like Faraday give you a reason to do science. And I am very grateful that such people existed, and we have such wonderful examples. Well, I don't want to take time to talk about my own research, but I also have found in this country, if you keep on trying, never give up. Don't give up, however hard, until you attain that goal of doing the right kind of experiment, the right kind of facility, the right kind of equipment. Some equipment you may build, some you may buy, all kinds of things. Eventually you get money somehow. Those who don't give up succeed even in India, except that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. Nowadays it's not so bad. Now young people get crores of rupees grants nowadays. When we started, it used to be my first grant in India was 3,000 rupees. 3,000 rupees was a standard grant in 1950s. So I think my own research have found that not giving up, doing things like J.C. Bose or Michael Faraday is very important. In fact, it has been a wonderful life for me. I have absolutely no regrets. I find, for example, even as I'm approaching 80, every now and then I pick up a new area of research. I work in all kinds of areas. Last 2 years I'm working on artificial photosynthesis. I'm amazed about this. I asked many young people, why don't you work on artificial photosynthesis? It's a wonderful subject. More than that, if you can make hydrogen the way plants make hydrogen, I think it'll be fantastic. Study photosynthesis, what is amazing is, how do these leaves pick up the sunlight, split the water into oxygen, oxidized water, then eventually produce hydrogen, protons, and of course that forms NADPH, food and all that. But if you, of course, don't do that and collect it as hydrogen, of course it will be very nice. But how do plants do that? With this fantastic electron transport chain. The electrons keep going from one side to another with extraordinary rapidity, many of them in a femtosecond. It always amazes you. But can I do that in the lab? In a beaker, in a flask? That is, of course, a very interesting thing. In fact, you can. But with not as much efficiency as a leaf, but really well. In fact, I made oxidation of water, without the water oxidation complex, without all the chlorophyll and all the other ingredients in it, all the famous calcium manganese cluster that is there in the protein. So they're very interesting. To me, these are the things that keep me alive. Finding something new which I had not thought of, do something new that keeps you very absorbed. And then every now and then you get all kinds of things. In fact, one of the things that happened in about 7 years ago, as you know, graphene was discovered. Graphene is nothing but a one atom thick sheet of carbon atoms, 6-membered rings, graphene. That, of course, caused a revolution. It's a major thing in science, because that single sheet has electrons of a kind which we had never seen before. The electrons move very fast, tremendous mobility, ballistic conduction of electrons, give all kinds of phenomena, properties, with number of applications also possible. in electronics, in number of things. But 4 or 5 years ago, I tell you, this is a real story. This is not a joke. I said, why only graphene? Why only carbon? After all, many other layered materials are there, like graphite. Why don't I make one atom thick other materials? So I made for the first time molybdenum sulfide, which has a layered structure, boron nitride, whole bunch of things. And that molybdenum sulfide, a very interesting thing. A lot of things I did last 4 years. You may not believe it. Last 1 year, it has become the hottest topic you can imagine in physics and chemistry. Everybody's in my dad. How did you write the first paper? First 2 papers on that. And of course, I'm doing many things now. There are about 30, 40 papers in Nature in the last 1 year itself. The Science, Nature, large number of papers, number of applications, phenomena, number of new kinds of physics that has come out of it. And this one kind of a inorganic layered material, which is 1 atom thick, but not carbon, not graphene. So this is the kind of excitement that I like. I like by this, because I like to live because of this exciting thing that comes to you every now and then. And you yourself discover something new which you don't expect. Suddenly it becomes a hot topic. In fact, I've just now, yesterday before I came here this morning, in fact, I sent away to the American Chemical Society. They asked me, can I write a frontier article on this entire field, how this has become such a hot topic now. I've just sent it. In fact, I got already a note from the editor talking about how thankful he is for having written this and so on. It really, this kind of thing, you keep on having these tremendous encounters with great benefit, tremendous experiences which are exciting, tremendous acts of your own that give results beyond your imagination. That is why science to me is interesting. And another thing is, science has helped me not to worry about trivialities. I don't care a damn about onion price or price of any vegetable. You can sell it for 100 rupees a gram, I don't care. I don't think it is important in life. I don't think people should worry about small things, at least scientists. In fact, scientists, unfortunately, worry about small things. I think they should. They're so much more enjoyable to think of something else. And as Rabindranath Tagore said in Gitanjali, in one of his poems, the worst thing that man has is his self. Suppose you didn't have self, you didn't have selfishness, the world wouldn't be the same. Same, Gautam Buddha said the same thing too, about in a different way. But what Rabindranath Tagore says always impresses me. I don't have the poem because I didn't come prepared to read it out for you from Gitanjali. What it says is, what is this terrible shadow that follows me shamelessly wherever I go? That self of mine, can't it, I want to be left alone, be free from that self. Tagore says that is absolutely true. And nothing but science can give you that. If you are really interested in science, the only thing you worry about is doing that science, working with those young people, bring them up. Lots of young people who come as, some of them become greater scientists than yourself. That kind of a thing has been a wonderful thing. Well, somebody has asked me in an interview, several of them, last few weeks, months, how long will you go and do it? Now 80 years old, I've been doing research for 63 years. The seeds of research were shown in the great abode of education and knowledge Madan Mohan Malviya created in Benares. Oh, everything over there. What a great man. And that Benares University, that is really, in that Kulgit it says, it is really a Rajdhani. It was a Rajdhani for great knowledge. And I owe my everything because I started there. That was 63 years ago. I've been a professor for 55 years now. I mean, just 80. In a few days I'll be 80. But the question is, how long will you continue? As long as I can. Till the last day, I can assure you. In fact, the other day I was reading about the life of Bismillah Khan. I'm very fond of Bismillah Khan because I used to know him very well when I was a student in Benares. And I kept this friendship for a long time until he died. Bismillah Khan was asked just a few months or maybe a year before he died, Rabbi, how long, what is it you want to pray to God? He was a very interesting man. He used to sing, very fond of Kabir Das, who was also a Benares person. And he used to say, oh God, in Hindi it sounds better, in English it is like this, oh God, as long as I live, let me live in the world of music. What a wonderful prayer. I feel the same way about science. I think then nothing else is required. I think it's wonderful. And then also about energy. I said, how can you have energy? How can you go on doing this? Energy is not in a physical energy. Bulls have more energy than all of us. That is not the energy we're talking about. No, the energy is something, it's here. Of course, again, Kabir Das, I hope you all know that famous song, Maname Ganga, Maname Kashi, Maname Dhyana Karo. Maname Buddhi hai, Maname Jnana hai, Maname sab kuch hai. But that is no question in my mind. God has been very kind to me. I will never be able to thank him enough for giving me this opportunity to go on doing science. And I will do that till the last day. And of course, this is where I feel bad about India. How come India has not become great? You see, just before Professor C.V. Raman died, he was 80, just when he was, what I am now, just 80, 1971. He had a very nice meeting of the academy. He became very fond of me for some reason. In fact, he was the one who made me a member of the Academy of Indian Academy of Science. I was only 29 years old when he asked me to be a member of that academy long, long ago. He said, Professor Rao, he had a very characteristic way of talking. It's unbelievable. He'd shout and, why is it India not a great country in science? I feel very bad about it. That's how he used to talk. Now I'm 80, I feel exactly like it. It's amazing. In fact, I will never forget what Raman said, because there is some truth in that. After all, we have everything. We have the brains better than anybody in the world. Nobody could beat him in his honesty, integrity, straightforwardness. Once I was a young staff member. I was an assistant professor in the institute. I was just 30 years old. I was 26 years old. And suddenly we got a call. Pandit Nehru had come to National Congress Adhiveshan. उसका अधिवेशन होता है ना, वो क्या कांग्रेस का, नेशनल कांग्रेस का, वही सामने, it was just उसका institute, I'm sorry, I'm speaking to Hindi, next to Indian Social Science. And suddenly Nehru said, let us go and meet C.V. Raman, he told. And people called C.V. Raman, Pandit Nehru wants to come. And his wife and others didn't know, if Nehru comes, there is nobody in the lab except C.V. Raman, old man. So immediately they called people, Satish Dhawan, myself and Ramsesh. Three of us immediately rushed in Satish Dhawan's old jalopy. He used to have an old Morris Manor, three of us in his car. There was C.V. Raman in front with Indira Gandhi, young Indira Gandhi. Behind was, just behind, 2 feet behind was Nehru with somebody, I forget who he was. And way behind was Satish Dhawan, Ramsesh and myself. And there was Raman shouting, Mrs. Gandhi, your father has ruined science, ruined India. And Nehru listened to it, just smiled. That is the thing. We need this kind of tolerance. We need this kind of thing, and we need people in science who can shout like that. We need politicians who smile after that. It is very wonderful. And I think we have a good chance in a new government. I hope they will do everything right. But what they should know is that they don't have too much time. We don't have too much time. My guess is India has a time of about 10 to 15 years to become a great nation. Maybe 20 years to become a top-class country where there are 20 universities in the top 100 in the world. India contributes at least 10% to the world science. Top 1% of the research, India's contribution is at least another 10%, not instead of 1%. All that has to happen in the next 10 years, maybe 15 years, because China is, the way they are investing money, it's almost embarrassing. In fact, it is unbelievable, frightening. And Korea particularly, the way they are doing, improving quality, investing things. They have beaten Japan already, don't forget. Japan is second rate compared to South Korea today. So we have to know. Time. Well, time, I will close my lecture in 2 minutes. I didn't plan to say this. I didn't bring that to my regular lecture, I read it out. There is a beautiful book on Michael Faraday. I've read all the books on Faraday. The latest one of the book called The Electric Life of Michael Faraday. In that, somebody writes to Faraday, one of his friends, Mr. Abbott, Dear Mr. Faraday, I'm writing so many letters to you, don't reply, what is the matter? Have we lost our friendship? Faraday writes, of course we have not lost our friendship. There is something in this world which can be extended, which can be shortened. which can be enjoyed, which can be suffered through, which can be something worthwhile, and which can be rotten. There's something this something is so valuable and so important that God Almighty thought only of giving you a small amount of that. What is that? Time. If God thought time was a cheap thing, He would have lived 500 years. Maximum 100 years. Some unlucky ones live 120, I'm told. Lucky ones live before 100. So, that's a beautiful thing. We have not much time. We have to worry about time and doing things fast. And I do hope that my very informal peroration of this evening will be accepted by you and not misunderstood in any way. I'm very grateful to you for asking me. I can assure you, I will never forget that I belong to this country. Everything I have done in science is from India. Everything. Every paper, all the 1,000 and odd papers. I think it has been a great pleasure working here, in spite of all the problems. And second, science has been the biggest companion. Next is, of course, my wife. And so, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Did we see in Professor C.N.R. Rao Sahab a global scientist? Did we see in him a mentor, or did we see in him a teacher par excellence? You saw all the expressions. I mean, so it was a typical a class at the highest level, and that's what he has been, teacher, as he said, 63 years of science, 63 years of teaching, 63 years of mentoring. Sir, for all this, so very grateful. I must say it was science and the kind of humor he has. You just even the last remark of his. Sir, we have enjoyed under your chairmanship at the Science Advisory Council to the Honorable Prime Minister. One day he asked us to make a presentation on agriculture. One day he asked us to make a presentation on water in agriculture. One day he suddenly asked, because some of you asked a few questions, one day he would suddenly tell, in the town of Kolar, so much of tomatoes on the roads, what are you doing? I mean, this kind of connection to the ground, on the ground, all the time, the head so high, so tall in the sky, but feet firmly on the ground. This is what Professor C.N.R. Rao is for us. And here, as the chair of the Scientific Advisory Council, I must mention to the esteemed fellowship and the colleagues from the National Agricultural Research System, he did write a letter to whoever mattered at that time for the support to Indian agriculture, Indian agricultural science. I must mention this. This letter is on record. He said how important agricultural research is to this country, and he has written that letter as chair of the Scientific Advisory Council to the Honorable Prime Minister. Sir, you talked of change. I must mention here, he is one of the only 3 Indian scientists who have been conferred Bharat Ratna. You are aware of it. Sir C.V. Raman, Dr. Abdul Kalam, and Professor C.N.R. Rao. So can we, that's why I said it's such a fortune that you are amidst us. You have addressed the entire National Agriculture Research System. We have recorded your presentation, which will be webcast, which is already webcast, which will be in our website and so on. You talked of change in society, change in science, all those things. I must mention this for Professor C.N.R. Rao at his level of eminence. There is no big science and there is no small science. This is one thing we learned during his chairmanship of the council. Any of the Scientific Advisory Council, anything that's brought to him with anything interesting, anything curious, everything, he addressed with the same elegance as he would address superconductivity in his laboratory. That's what was enthusing us, inspiring us, electrifying us, transforming us all the time. And this synergy, you heard from him, Bismillah Khan to Michael Faraday to Bismillah Khan. This kind of synthesis, symphony, synergy, I mean, it's so wonderful, sir, to listen, to hear from you. You talked of the suitcases and empty brains, and that was very, 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 very interesting, because we are lost students. We are lost students in science. We are lost students to biology, and particularly for agriculture, we are lost students. The generation of 60s, the teachers that we had, we don't have now. Because 30 years, about 20 years at least, bright students went to IT. Now there appears to be a kind of renewed interest in agriculture. That's what we are trying to bring out. I'd also like to mention, as Professor Rao himself said, Uttarakhand and other, he would address school children with the same interest as he did to the esteemed fellowship of the academy today. That's what we have also been requesting our fellowship. Wherever possible, kindly visit colleges and schools. Just your presence there would be electrifying to the students, inspiring for their lifetime. That's what we have, sir. In the morning we were discussing some of these things. So our esteemed fellowship would urge on this also. I would not take more time, but he has already said a time frame, say 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, not more than that, for this country to become a leader, for do whatever we are desiring. At this stage, you already had given him an instant. I could make out the moment he said thank you, all of you stood up in that instant response and reaction. But for a formal thanking, I would once again request you for a standing ovation to this tall giant, to this scientist of eminence at this stage. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
We would also like to felicitate We are also privileged to have with us on this occasion guests of honors, Dr. R.S. Paroda, Dr. R.B. Singh, and Dr. Punjab Singh, former presidents of the NAAS, and we would like to felicitate them. Dr. R.S. Paroda. Professor R.B. Singh. And now Dr. Punjab Singh, please. Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor N.K. Singh, Secretary NAAS, to present a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. It is my honor and privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks for today's function. First of all of you would agree that we have been really fortunate here today with our chief guest delivering this Foundation Day lecture, Professor C.N.R. Rao, Bharat Ratna. And we were trying to get a title for his lecture, but we could not get. But now he would have changed it anyway. So we were so lucky that he spoke from the heart. And all of us were so much benefited. He narrated all these stories of great scientists and his inspirations and the great institutions also. So, sir, we are very, very thankful to you for your, you are really science personified here in India. And the विज्ञान आपके स्वभाव में है, आपने बिल्कुल विज्ञान की बात की. For this academy, we are all very grateful to you. You also mentioned the great institutions like Banaras Hindu University. Many of us are alumni of co-alumni, sir. We are very grateful that you mentioned Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi. So these great institutions are really needed in India, as you also pointed out, that what we lack is the great institutions where people can study. So we are very much, sir, thankful for your illuminating talk. I also like to thank our president of the academy, Dr. Ayappan, for organizing, for getting him to deliver this lecture to us. And also we have today our past president, Dr. R.S. Paroda, Dr. R.B. Singh, also past DG, Dr. Punjab Singh, who are also felicitated here today. Sir, we'd like to thank all of you for being present here on this great occasion. And further, I would like to thank on the dais Dr. P.L. Gautam, our Vice President of the Academy, Dr. Gurbachan Singh, Chairman SRB, Mr. Arvind Kaushal, Secretary ICR, and Dr. M.P. Yadav, other Secretary of the NAAS. I would also like to thank our Honorable Padma Awardee, Dr. M. Mahadevappaji, Dr. Brahm Singh, and Dr. Ajay Parida for accepting our request for felicitation in this, at this occasion. We are very much honored, sir, for your presence here and to take the felicitation. Of course, you are also our honored NAAS Fellow. Again, amongst you are Dr. Manju Sharma and Dr. C.R. Bhatia, former Secretary of the DBT, and all of you, this esteemed fellowship. We have many vice chancellors and directors and many people with very high positions, but most of all, you are all our fellow of this academy. As Professor Rao told that we are all scientists, and these scientists should be in our blood and the nature, and the science should serve the humanity, and we look forward to guidance from all of you. So I don't want to take a lot of time, but it is my duty to thank also our comparer, Dr. Sanjeev Saxena. He has done really great job to compare this thing, and other organizers of this. We have a secretariat, sir, in our NAAS Academy. We have people who work very tirelessly day and night. So I will read out their name: Mr. S.C. Pathak, Mr. Pandey, Mr. Meenu, Mr. Umesh Rai, Mr. Krishna, Kamal, Jai Singh, and Banwari Lal Yadav. We like to thank at this occasion, appreciate their contribution because they work day and night behind us.